teacher that definitely formed my worldview, and also kitchen table conversations. I think certainly are at the heart of my interest in public service. It's in my DNA. But I was a small business owner in South San Francisco, served as council member and mayor in that fine city. And 10 years in the California State Assembly, 8 of which I was the Speaker Pro Tem, so the number 2 officer, had the opportunity to be in the leadership and preside over our floor sessions, which was an extraordinary opportunity given that we had a Democratic supermajority and a very productive time. Definitely a different environment I'm operating in Washington, D.C., being a member of the minority party, but also pretty low on the seniority ranking. It does turn over quickly though, so I am gradually moving up. I serve on the Energy and Commerce Committee now, which is a influential policy committee. Lots of oversight over the American economy, large sectors of the American economy, also the energy sector and healthcare, a whole range of sectors that affect people's daily lives. So that has been a little bit of a win, given that I'm only in my 3rd year in the House of Representatives. But it is really the honor of my life to serve in this position, a culmination of years of study in government and politics. I also don't want to neglect, I served, cut my teeth really, working for Jackie Spear, who was my that service was when she was in the legislature, both in the Assembly and the Senate. But I really got hooked on politics doing casework, the nuts and bolts work of a local district office, helping people navigate the state bureaucracy. And now I've got an incredible team that helps folks navigate the federal bureaucracy. And I do want to give a quick shout out. I have Mario Rendon, my district director. I've got Bruno Brasiliero as well here, and then Samantha Weigel, my communications director. If you guys can just wave. Mario is in the back room there, but I could not do what I do without the incredible staff that I have. So that's a real quick and dirty overview, but it is even given the emergency situation we find ourselves, fighting an authoritarian president, and quite literally fighting for the survival of democracy, and that's where you all come in so effectively. It is still an extraordinary opportunity to do a little something every day, sometimes big things, mostly incremental in the political configuration we have, but it is an extraordinary opportunity to do something every day to help the people of my district. And I make that flight. I still live here in the district, and not every member does. Not to be critical of that, but some members choose to move their families to Washington, D.C. I fly home every weekend to be with my wife and 7-year-old twin boys who go to public school in South San Francisco. I'm very much rooted in this district, and it is a wonderful opportunity to serve here. So thank you for that.
Thank you. So speaking about elections, you co-chair the task force on strengthening democracy with Congresswoman Williams of Georgia, and it's we see now what's going on with this administration and his red state buddies trying to rig the maps to guarantee their continued control of Congress. And thankfully we have Prop 50, we have Newsom stepping up, not to mention trolling Trump, which is just kind of fun. And we, as Susan mentioned, we will be organizing our members to collaborate with other groups that are working on get out the vote efforts. And I saw that you had put out a statement in favor of Prop 50. Wondering if you and your fellow California delegation members have come up with any collaborative plan for supporting Prop 50, and is there any particular support or tactics that you'd like to see from grassroots groups like ours?
Well, thank you for that. It is a great opportunity to be the co-chair of the Task Force on Strengthening Democracy. That was born out of my involvement at the state level, working on voting by mail, which we pioneered here. All vote by mail elections we pioneered here.
I understand Putin doesn't like that. Putin doesn't recommend that we do vote by mail.
Yeah, so we've got a president who's quite literally trying to do away with voting by mail, calling into question previous elections, even though he did win an election. under the current rules. So we have pioneered voting by mail. We expanded it to 5 counties and then statewide, and then when the pandemic hit, it really became a national phenomenon. But you need to be proud of the work that was done right here in San Mateo County. We proved the model works where AAPI turnout goes up, Latino turnout goes up, youth turnout goes up when you automatically get a ballot postage paid, and you make it easier than ever before. As long as you still have vote centers in communities for folks that still want to go and use the machines and to personally drop their ballots off. But we've done a great work in California on that, and that's how I was able to sort of get that nod on that task force. But so we are quite literally at that break in the case of emergency moment when it comes to our democracy. Nobody likes gerrymandering. We don't want to be having this conversation right now, but we must have it. We must counter what Donald Trump is trying to do to our democracy. And we already have a situation where the number of swing seats that are in play in the election is very narrow. Before the Texas-California conversation happened, even with the wind at our back, it was going to be difficult to take the majority because just the number of seats that are sort of in play to flip is a small number of seats. So we are talking about a very narrow band of seats already. So I'm proud that the governor stepped up and our legislative leaders stepped up, understanding the severity of the moment that our democracy faces. So I most certainly support Proposition 50. We have a conference call tomorrow, as a matter of fact, with the California delegation to talk about that very question, about what the rules are with regard to fundraising and campaigning for Proposition 50, certainly given the very short runway we have. But make no mistake, there's going to be $100 million plus coming at this measure in opposition. In fact, the day after it sort of went public, I'm sure you all got the mail piece that I got, funded by billionaires opposed to this measure. Arnold Schwarzenegger will be vocal in opposition. He, I think, sees that commission as one of his babies. So we have to continue to remind people we're not getting rid of the commission. This is a temporary measure, and we're going to preserve the commission for redrawing the districts in 2030 to take effect in 2032, those new maps at that point. You all, given the amount of money that is going to be coming at this from billionaires, and keep in mind, it's a lot easier to sort of get folks to say no to these things on the ballot than it is to get them to say yes. Granted, we do have a Democratic advantage in California. On the natural, we should be successful, but it's going to take work. It most certainly is going to take work, and it's going to take work at the grassroots level. So this organization and many others working to counter the big money, and certainly I hope that we will have a well-funded operation on our side, and making the case to our California public that quite literally democracy hangs in the balance with this election in November of 2026. We have to be a check on Donald Trump's authoritarian power. We can make him a lame duck for his final 2 years. That won't stop him from going around the Congress, even if we have the gavels and we're in control, but it's gonna make his life a lot more difficult, and we'll be able to proactively move an agenda and bring some balance to the governing equation, and it starts right here this November with that special election.
Murmurs of other red states jumping on that bandwagon. Do you know any, scuttlebutt on that, on what other states we expect to offer themselves to assist Trump, and what the plan will be in response to that?
I have certainly heard that there are other red states in play. I know that J.D. Vance went to Indiana to try to convince that legislature and their Republican governor to move quickly to redraw maps, and I believe we have 2 Democrats that hold seats in Indiana, one being Frank Mervan, who I know sort of like homeroom, when it's alphabetized, he's Mervan and I'm Mullin, so we are next to each other on the vote tally board, and he's a wonderful gentleman from Indiana. I certainly hope that that legislature will take a pass. I understand they have respect for that, every decade process when the census numbers come out. I'm certainly hopeful that some of these Republican states will hold off the push. But it is difficult when you've got a president pounding on you who can go to Truth Social or whatever it is and blast you. And suddenly you're getting threats from Republican voters. This is a threatening environment that this president is creating for his Republican underlings, if you will. So I don't envy them, but they need to have a backbone. And the Republican majority has to get a backbone to stand up to this guy. And we have a speaker who is abdicating his congressional powers, the Article I powers. He is setting a standard where the speaker is letting a president do whatever he wants, and the executive is accumulating power. So not only is he doing something I find completely objectionable just on philosophy and policy, he's doing something that undermines constitutional powers of the Congress itself, which we are going to have to turn around, and we will turn around when we're successful on November 26th.
Very good. Thank you. So, still on this elections voting question, where do you expect Trump's executive orders, including the vote by mail, the voting restrictions that he's already tried, he's continuing to work on, and then there's still the SAVE Act. Many of us in the room are still concerned about the SAVE Act, that it's not dead. It's not dead at all, and it could come back to the Senate at any moment. And what are the prospects for that, as well as for these executive orders surviving the courts?
Well, the executive order on voting by mail has no force of law. It really goes beyond the powers of the president. Congress certainly can engage on electoral matters and elections matters and election funding matters, for example. But elections are largely the function of states and localities, sort of disaggregated by design, where the powers are spread out across the counties, across the country, which actually is an element of security to avoid sort of a national hack, if you will, from Russia or other bad actors out there who want to disrupt our national elections. So they're disaggregated and decentralized by design. So I am not worried about the effect of the voting by mail executive order. But I am worried that you have a president with a lot of power who doesn't have a check from a compliant Congress, who will threaten down the food chain to state by state. We've already got local elections officials, nonpartisan local elections officials, professionals, facing threats on their life in some cases, because you have an election denier with the loudest megaphone in the country. And these people are operating under extreme stress already. But the amount of misinformation being put out by the president about how our elections work is a chief violation of our democratic norms. And this guy never should have been within a football field of the Oval Office again. Never should have happened. That's a failure. It is a failure of my Democratic Party. We should have won that election. We can relitigate that and talk about it. Mistakes that we're still paying for. But we can't change history. We can only go forward. But I am absolutely concerned that this is just emblematic, this executive order, emblematic of what will be continued attacks on election integrity, undermining the good work of professionals across the country in red states and blue states, setting the pretext, of course, that if we take the majority in 26, or we win the presidency in 28, he will have a built-in sort of challenge in the public consciousness about the validity of that election. It is a crime against democracy already. It's a crime in progress against democracy. We are on the right side of history on this. We have the facts on our side. We're going to continue to fight to stand up for local elections workers and voting by mail, and pushing back against the red states that are erecting barriers to participation, when California ought to be the model nationally for accessing the ballot box and making it as easy to vote as possible. They know their policies are unpopular. They want to erect barriers to voting. And there is just no doubt in my mind that is a coordinated attack. And you simply cannot have a situation where the only valid elections are ones that you win. I mean, this is kindergarten kind of stuff from this guy. We have a child running the executive. There's just no getting around it. We have to endure it. We have to beat it back. We have to beat him at every turn, and we will.
So moving on to another issue that we love, the environment. Given the anti-environmental, anti-health positions and agenda of the Trump administration, what are you and other Democrats in Congress doing in this arena? And again, what do you suggest we do in the district to help you mitigate the administration's anti-environmental, anti-health agenda?
Yeah, just devastating kinds of actions by this Republican majority. We had, I believe the number was 21 Republican House members sign on with Democrats in a bipartisan letter to preserve the clean energy tax credits in the Inflation Reduction Act. Huge victory for Joe Biden and the Congress at that time to move the IRA, $400 billion. Not enough, but still the most significant federal investment in clean energy in history. Many, if not most, of those tax credits have been stripped out when the big ugly budget bill passed. And those Republican signers just folded, like most of these Republicans just do when the president applies pressure. This is, the Republican majority is taking us backwards. One of the chief reasons I got onto the Energy and Commerce Committee is because we in San Mateo County are quite literally on the front line of climate change, with sea level rise affecting the shoreline of the bay. We have the latest number, and it's only going to go up, but $24 billion with a B, $24 billion in property values at risk in the inundation zone along the bayfront right here in San Mateo County. I am working on not only climate resilience generally, but groundwater legislation as the sea level rises, as the bay level rises. There's damage that is done with groundwater surge and infrastructure damage. We have to come up with a national plan to deal with groundwater rise and sea level rise. So I've got bipartisan legislation moving on that through that committee. The challenge is, you may appreciate this, whenever I try to get bipartisan support on anything climate related, I can't use the phrase climate change.
Of course not.
That's how politicized climate change has become. When we all know what the science is, and you give truth serum to my Republican colleagues, they would tell you the same damn thing. They know what's happening. But they are afraid of the politics and a right-wing media ecosystem that will attack them for doing something with a Democrat on climate. So there are artificial barriers being erected in how these issues are dealt with. When the science is abundantly clear, we need to be working in a bipartisan way to deal with what is to come. So we talk about extreme weather, which is not going away. These extreme weather events are increasing in frequency. We need to prepare. I've got something called the RAP Act, a Weatherization Resilience Adaptation Program, be a new national program to help low-income homeowners and affordable housing complexes make their properties more resilient to extreme weather. Red states, blue states, climate change doesn't care, extreme weather doesn't care. This is a national phenomenon. We have to be leading on it. So I'm going to keep pushing on this. And just one last note, just while I'm talking about my bills, not to put anybody to sleep here, delving into legislation, but emergency alert system. We have real inadequacy in this country on how we prepare for extreme weather events. The horrific floods in Texas I think, have woken up some of my Republican colleagues to deal with this issue in earnest. We need to be putting more money, developing a strategy around developing emergency alert systems across the country that are really appropriate to the scale of what is to come with these very dangerous extreme weather events. And we should be depoliticizing that, and that is where the federal government needs to be stepping in and helping states and localities with resources and other means to upgrade our alert systems across the country to prepare and save lives when these events occur. So these are nuts and bolts issues that I want to work on in this committee, but climate and democracy are my two pillars, and really why I ran for office and why I get on that plane every week. So I am heartened by the focus of this group on those issues. So I'm appreciative of the grassroots work that you are doing to build consciousness and real support for what we need to be doing on both of those issues.
Another of your passions is addressing economic inequity. You mentioned the weatherizing bill, but where do you see opportunities for addressing this locally and federally, and how can we support your efforts?
And this was
economic equity.
Economic equity.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. Income inequality is continues, it persists regardless of administration, and it has to be grappled with. We are the epicenter of the affordability crisis right here on this San Francisco Peninsula. We know the quality of life we have here, the jewel that is the peninsula. Of course, it's expensive to live here, but we need to be building more affordable housing so we can have a younger generation that can afford to stay in a community that they grew up in. We are not providing enough opportunities for the next generation. I wouldn't be able to live here if I hadn't been fortunate enough to inherit a property when my mother and father passed away. And both my wife and I make very good salaries. We're very fortunate, but there is just no way we could have done it. So if you're, if you grow up here but you don't have the ability to inherit property, it's so hard to break into this market here on the peninsula. So we just have to do more, federal, state, local, on building affordable housing and making that accessible. But we also, we have to modernize the way we do funding formulas at the federal level. I've got something called the Poverty Line Act. We last established the criteria for the poverty line in the 1960s under Lyndon Johnson. And, there were certainly efforts around war on poverty and lots of attention at that time, but the poverty line was structured on food costs. So I have a legislation, bipartisan, but it's going to take a lot of effort because you're talking about changing a status quo, a formula that's been in place for decades. But I want to include healthcare costs, I want to include housing costs, I want to include childcare costs, utility costs, all of the kitchen table costs have to be factored in when we're doing federal formulas. If you're not paying attention to those kinds of costs, you're really not properly capturing what poverty is, especially in a high-cost area like the Bay Area, but it's really a phenomenon across the country. But what happens is, the most powerful thing in politics I've learned is the status quo, and people become invested in the status quo. So people, I think, are sort of shocked when I say I want to change this formula because it's been in place for so many years. We have to do things like that to better capture what is happening to working families, even when they're making good salaries, but especially if you've got service workers working 2, sometimes 3 jobs. There is no money at the end of the month for so many people in this country. And if we aren't focusing on that at the federal level, we are completely missing what is at the heart that not only drives family budgets, but it drives politics in this country. If we're not talking about this as a party, and we are getting derailed with sort of esoteric issues, we are missing it, folks. We need to be focusing on kitchen table issues and how hardworking families in this country can make it. We need to be the party on their side, not on the side of corporations and billionaires. And the reality is, this is the last thing I'll say on this. I know I'm filibustering a little bit here, but the big ugly budget bill slashes Medicaid. 17 million people will be thrown off their health care. So wealthy individuals and corporations can get their taxes, get their tax cuts maintained and in some cases extended. I, for one, support reverting to a 35% corporate tax rate, which is where it was when we had a balanced budget in 1993. And that doesn't mean I'm anti-corporation. The reality is we are a life sciences hub. More life sciences companies right here in my district than any other district in America. I am proud of that. The research and development, the science that is happening in this district is tremendous. We can support that through R&D tax credits and a pro-science philosophy, but also properly tax corporations that are truly profitable and make sure that we are all spreading those gains around to make life a little easier for working people in this country. You can do those things at the same time. They're not mutually exclusive. And we are saddling future generations with more debt, $4 trillion added to a $37 trillion debt because of the tax cuts in that bill that passed by one vote in the House. Your kids and your grandkids are gonna have to pay for the fiscal irresponsibility in that bill. Job number one, if we take the House, is to reverse the Medicaid cuts to help people who need it in this country and try to bring some equity back into the economic equation. And if we're not focused on that, we are focusing on the wrong things. You're going to hear a lot about the impacts on this bill, on working people. The challenge is many of the effects on this bill won't be felt until right after the election in November 26th. Of course, they structured it that way for political purposes. And Medicaid is called something different in all 50 states. So we need to be careful about the language we use when we say Medicaid cuts. In California, it's known as Medi-Cal. These are all things that we have a responsibility to educate the public about and make it very clear what the differences are between the parties. And for those folks who say there is no difference between the political parties, look at that bill, where every Democrat voted against, every Republican voted for. That is a statement of where the priorities are between the parties, but we need to educate the people in a more effective way than we are right now.
Yeah. Thank you. I just have one more question, but I want to remind everyone this is your last chance to send the cards, question cards down to the end if you want to have a shot at getting a question. Okay, so you might have heard of the 1 Million Rising campaign. This is something Indivisible national with other groups nationally came up with. I heard some whoops. We've set a goal for in our chapter of holding 50 gatherings. This is a way of well, I'll tell you, it's a way to educate friends, family, colleagues, and neighbors about how the authoritarian playbook works, what the pillars of society are that either support the regime or if they defect, they crumble the regime, and what each of us can do to help stop that. So do you have any advice for us as we engage in this task? Or any other thoughts about how we can work together to educate and activate Americans who may still be sitting on the sidelines?
Well, the fact that you can fill up a room like this with a regular meeting, the fact that you could organize and the groups that came together around the No Kings protest, there is tremendous energy out there, but it takes real organization and a real plan, and at the risk of catering to my audience here, I got a copy of your organizing plan. Very impressed with how thoughtful it was with all of the elements where you sort of strike a balance between pushing your elected officials appropriately, but also giving them support when they make difficult decisions is a well thought out approach to building popular support. The only way we are going to effectively counter this authoritarian president and this authoritarian movement is through mass mobilization, through the kinds of grassroots action that is at the heart of what you all are involved in. We'll certainly do what we can in the Congress, procedurally and otherwise, to block actions that actually come through the Congress. So much goes around the Congress, and fortunately, federal courts have been effective in knocking back many things. Doesn't get a lot of attention, but much of the illegal acts by Elon Musk and Doge and this administration, blatantly illegal and knocked back by the federal courts. But we can't rely on the United States Supreme Court to adhere to anything except politics. I never thought I'd say it. It's the reality of the situation we find ourselves. So we can't rely on that. We have to win elections. We have to get through, however, the next 17 months countering daily, and it is exhausting, but countering by building public opinion, by building a mass support against what people are seeing. I think there's an opportunity to tap an incredible energy that is building. I do see just some of the incredibly disturbing images with how ICE is enforcing the laws. We certainly support a secure border, but you have masked, unidentified agents. I saw a video of a woman being ripped out of the school pickup line where she was going to get her 2 kids and thrown into a van. This is un-American, it's inhumane. It does remind me on some level, I'm old enough to remember Prop 187 and some of the public grassroots reactions to what people were seeing. There is going to be a reaction to what people see, and in their gut they know is un-American. And you all have an incredible responsibility. I, as an elected official, have an enormous responsibility to build that resistance in a meaningful way and translate it into political action. So we not only counter before the election and win this November in the special election, but build a wave that crests in November of 2026 so we can bring some checks and balances again to this equation in Washington, D.C.
Thank you. You addressed a lot of the questions that people wrote out ahead of time, so that's great. But we still have a number for you. So when you just touched on about ICE, and how are you able to protect the vulnerable in our community? And the Stanford, the woman who was picked up by ICE and taken to Stanford, it was specifically asked. And then there was just a real personal question of what will your office do if one of us is arrested? So I'm assuming by talking about the woman who was picked up by ICE, you'll show us what your plan is for if it happens to any one of us.
So certainly very concerned about what we're hearing on the East Palo Alto case. We are in the process right now of gathering as much information as we can. There are, however, privacy concerns. The fact that the woman in question is at Stanford Hospital. There are not only HIPAA concerns, but general privacy concerns. But my office is engaged, I believe, Congressman Liccardo's office as well, given that she was in East Palo Alto, which is my district, but Stanford Hospital in Congressman Liccardo's district. We are monitoring this closely. There's not any more information beyond that I can share at this point. We are in the process of trying to gather facts. But when you ever hear about ICE, when you hear ICE enforcement, of course, all of our alarm bells go off. So we are following that issue very closely. I believe we'll have more to say in the coming days on that. But we have to have. I've signed on legislation to make sure that ICE officers are not masked and have to identify themselves. I'm also aware of the reality of the challenges of getting something like that through this current Congress. but we are going to stay on top of this. What we are witnessing is inhumane. It to me feels un-American. It also points to the need for a actual comprehensive immigration reform policy, one that is humane, one that protects the Dreamers and DACA, one that brings money for asylum judges, one that actually approaches the immigration system through coherent public policy. Imagine that. The reality is we had bipartisan legislation before the election. Donald Trump says, I don't want the policy that'll work. I want the issue. I want the issue to hammer then candidate Joe Biden on and eventually candidate Kamala Harris on. He wanted the issue. That is just a window into how he operates. He wanted the issue as a wedge, as a hammer, as a divide and conquer device. And we are now living the reality of that. Stephen Miller's visions of America and Project 2025. We've got to counter it with what we can and call for, and if there was ever an issue, honestly, that cried out for bipartisan action, when you're talking about a labor force, you're talking about our hotels, our construction sites. This country runs on immigrant labor. It runs on immigrant labor. And to pretend it doesn't is ignorant. We need a policy that is one where, yes, the border is secure, but you have a humane system of earned citizenship that acknowledges the role that immigrants play in our economy. And if Democrats take the gavels, we will be advocating for exactly that.
So, just what are you doing and what can we do about the situation in DC and trying to prevent the similar thing from happening here in California?
I'm sorry, can you?
The militarization of the police in DC. You know, what can we do? What are you doing to try to address that? And what can we do to prepare for, if anything, or prevent, like the National Guard from coming to California?
They came to LA already.
They already did. So the Bay Area.
Yes.
So what can we do about this issue?
The National Guard deployment.
Yes.
Yeah, so look, this is being done over the objections of local officials. This is an authoritarian president trying to get people used to the idea of military in the streets. This is, on some level, must be, at all costs, trying to project strength. Because in the political context, strong often beats weak. And this is a strong man. This is a wannabe dictator who wants to project strength by moving troops around in urban environments where it is not needed. 30% reduction of violent crime in Washington, D.C. preceding this move. I really do believe this is about a president trying to get people desensitized to the visuals of troops in the streets. Now, you may take that to perhaps a logical conclusion that he may want to try to create chaos, create conflict as a pretext to canceling an election.
Exactly.
Now, I'm not ready to make that leap just yet, but I put nothing past this president. There are things that I thought would never happen, which have now happened. Now, I do think the president on some level thinks an election is coming and he's scared. That's why he's trying to get 5 seats in Texas. I think he knows an election is coming, and I think he knows the wind is at our back in opposition to what people are seeing. He can read polls just like we can. So I think he knows an election is coming and is going to be potentially on the losing end of it. But I really think it's about a wannabe dictator trying to project strength for political purposes. It really has no role. And think about just the misuse of these mostly young people, these National Guard troops, away from their families, used as political pawns by a president. It's shameful what he's doing. And we need to call it out. We need to win public opinion. And we need to be mindful that these National Guard troops are human beings. We need to be supportive of them and other troops who are being really misused by their so-called commander-in-chief. And it's shameful. It's shameful.
Thank you. Can you give us any insight into the Democrats' approach to the budget fight that's going to be happening soon?
The budget fight?
Yeah.
Well, I was in a 27-hour straight markup of that bill in Energy and Commerce Committee. I was able to tell the story of a Medicaid recipient in my district, a story that I heard at one of my town halls. I hold a number of town halls up and down the peninsula, and it was a very compelling story about a gentleman and his adult son who is autistic, who is deeply dependent on Medicaid. And I was able to tell that story. Unfortunately, the Republicans structured the hearing, so when the Democrats were telling our stories, and we each had a story to tell with a visual of who those people were, it was about 3 in the morning. Purposely structured to minimize the attention that it got. I mean, that's how the game is played back there. But I thought we were very effective in calling it out. The challenge is, and you know, we may fall a little bit into this trap back in Washington, D.C. on Capitol Hill. Because something is reverberating around Capitol Hill does not mean it is getting heard out there by the masses through this media ecosystem that we have. Maybe a topic for another night, but the reality is the right-wing media ecosystem is a powerful one. Fox News alone, just look at the numbers. Pumping out propaganda and misinformation. We do not have the same thing that we can counter with on the progressive side. We need to build up a progressive media infrastructure so we can be pushing our message out to the American people who don't necessarily tune into MSNBC or CNN. If you look at those numbers, they're ever shrinking as cable viewership shrinks. We need to be innovative in getting our democratic message out to the masses, to people that don't necessarily pay attention to politics like we all do. God bless you for doing so. When there's not a lot of attention, it's interesting, you know, Democrats do well, for example, in special elections. We picked up a seat on one of the states that was a Trump plus 11. We won that by 11 points. But that was an example of when Trump's not on the ballot, and it's really just sort of the hardcore voting base that's paying attention, we do well. When it is a mass environment, like a presidential cycle, when lots of people who don't normally vote come out to vote, we are not doing well. We have to reverse that equation, folks, or we're not going to win a presidential election for a while. We need to be able to reach people who don't pay attention to politics and reach them in a way that resonates with them in a meaningful way. Or we're going to be on the losing side of elections. We have to rethink the way we are communicating, especially to young people, and I see young people here. We need to be rethinking how we do this, because we need to reach a whole new generation of young people with a democratic message that resonates, where we're not just telling people what to think, but listening to them and developing a message based on their input. Not just a top-down kind of a thing, a bottom-up. And we need to fundamentally rethink the way we are doing our communications as a progressive movement. So, more to come on that.
Well, that was the next question about the media and holding them accountable, and how can we reach, how can we hold the media accountable, which I think is it's a valid question, I guess, but what do you have to say about that? How do we
hold the media accountable? I don't have a great answer to that other than, or referring probably to my prior answer, but the reality is part of the authoritarian playbook or fascist playbook is to undermine mainstream media. You know, they've undermined the mainstream media by calling it a liberal media. The reality is this is traditional fact-based media. I just want those institutions to survive, not because of they're progressive institutions, but they were trusted messengers out there, right? So Yes, we need to build up a progressive media infrastructure with opinion out there, right, and using digital media and so forth. But we need to be supporting traditional media institutions just to get facts out there, just so there's a common conversation. But the reality is, let's face it, traditional media is gradually going away. Now, you're going to have some pillars like the New York Times and big national entities survive, and you do have community newspapers doing well in places, not everywhere. There are news deserts in states across the country. Fortunately, here in San Mateo County, we've got the San Mateo Daily Journal, a local paper that focuses on local issues and helps educate the public. But that is definitely not the case across the country. I fought tooth and nail the cuts to the Corporation of Public Broadcasting, to PBS and NPR. Those institutions are vital. Now, PBS and NPR, I believe, will survive because they've got a strong donor base to backfill the loss of federal funds. And I think that it was something around 8%. I could be wrong about that, but it's about 8% of federal funding. When we take the gavels, we'll restore that funding. We need fact-based institutions. We're going to have to do a generation of rebuilding faith in institutions across the board. Not just traditional media, but people are losing faith in traditional, small d, democratic institutions in this country as part of a playbook. And we've got to counter that. Just for stability, for a civil society, we need to be on the side of those institutions without coming off as the status quo party. Because people are unhappy. The economy doesn't work for large swaths of this country. We need to be realistic about it. People want to blow up the boxes out there. People want reform, they should. But we are also fighting a movement that thrives when faith in institutions is eroded. And they fill the gap. So we got a lot of work on our hands, folks, to do this during Trump and a post-Trump America. And there will be a post-Trump America. And we got to win that.
Closing question, what gives you courage in the current climate?
What gives me courage is I get to do things like this and see that there are lots of people that care like I do about the future of their democracy and their country. It is when I look out here, and I've had a few lonely nights waking up at 3 in the morning, worried about this country. I've got 2 7-year-old boys, twin boys, watching heartbreaking images this morning from Minneapolis, thinking about what is that like as a parent to get that call that there's a mass shooter at your child's school. It's heartbreaking that this is America. We have got to establish national gun laws like we have in California because they work. They work. If you look at the data on gun control laws in California, they work. Assault weapons ban, background checks. What is happening in this country that this has somehow become normal? We cannot become inert to that. But it gives me faith when I can speak to groups like this with folks who care about their community and who are engaged. And I look out here and I gotta tell you, we're going to win this thing. We're going to win. We are at a low point right now. We are getting beat up. My party's brand is hurt. But I know, having followed this for 30 years, I can feel it building. I can feel it building, and we're going to reclaim our country in 2 years, and we're going to go full bore and get the Oval Office back in 2028. The people are going to be heard. I believe it. I hope you believe it too.
Before we say goodnight, thank you one more time. Mary Bevins has something to present to you. Mary is the leader of the Indivisible San Mateo chapter.
Wow, thank you so much. May I have a minute
You want a mic?
Yeah.
Come over here.
Yeah.
Come over here and use the mic.
Oh, look at this.
1
All
minute.
right, this is going up on the wall in the office.
We're here to say thank you.
Thank you for that.
Congressman Mullin.
Use the mic, Mary.
Yeah.
Here.
Oh, thank you so much, Nancy. And thank you, Congressman Mullin. Yes, if I may. My name is Mary Bevins. I founded Indivisible San Mateo in January because, like millions of people, I knew that Trump would destroy our democracy. And I wanted to establish a place for people in San Mateo to actively stop him. And in February, Vicki joined me as a co-founder, and I developed our mission statement, which includes encouraging Democratic electeds, like someone I know right here, to play hardball with the Republicans. So we were very grateful when you joined the House of Democrats, joined all the House Democrats and voted against Trump's big, ugly, ugly bill. And you left your hospital bed when you were recovering from knee surgery and flew to DC so that you could vote with all the other Democrats. So we put out a card in front of Hillsdale Mall where we protest every Saturday, put it on a table, and people signed the card. So thank you. And since Nancy was so nice to let me take a minute or a little more, I want to thank you for voting against the crypto bill, which was the Genius Act. That we were disappointed that half of the Democrats voted with the Republicans, but you did not. And that is very encouraging to us. The crypto bill made more billions for Trump. And I'm so glad, we're all glad that you voted against it. The thing that I would like to ask is the Republican caucus is always unified in lockstep. And many of us want the Democratic caucus to be unified in lockstep. And it's very disappointing to many of us who would like to see the Democrats in a strong united front. So the budget bill is coming up, and we'd like to see the Democrats all together. And do you think the Democrats will be united in their negotiations, especially since the Medicaid spending reductions will also trigger Medicare spending reductions? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. To answer your question, I fully expect Democrats will be completely unified in the upcoming appropriations process and budget votes. That particular policy bill, there was a division, but the big ugly budget bill was 215 to 214. All 214 in the chamber. Democrats voted against it. We will stand unified. Those big budget measures are too important to have any divisions. But the loss by a vote hurts. Elections matter. The swing of 5 seats will give us the gavels. When we fill it with a special election, an additional seat that's vacant, and we pick up 5, we get the gavels, we make Donald Trump a lame duck, and that's gonna be a great day, but we only do it with proper organizing and all of your help. Can I just say, this is wonderful. You asked what keeps me going. This kind of stuff keeps me going. Thank you. And I'm going to frame this and put this up on my Capitol Hill office wall, so I'm reminded every day this evening.
Thank you.
So thank you all very much. I'm deeply grateful.